Welcome to The Ash, our Ghosts Real podcast. Here we share the stories of our listeners and the paranormal experiences they have encountered. We have all heard the bump in the night and seen the shadow in the corner of the room. Here are the stories from the people who have witnessed it firsthand, so sit back and listen to the stories that Ash and his guests have in store for you.
Hello, and welcome to the latest instalment of the Ash, a Ghost Show podcast. Today, I've got the Essex Ghost Hunters as Russ. He kindly joined me on my first ever episode, and he's back again today. How you doing, Russ?
Hi there, guys. You all right? How you doing?
Not too bad. I think we're doing okay. It's a bit of a weird one today because we're not going to just discussing a specific place, but we want to be discussing the Enfield Poltergeist, and the height of it was massive. So essentially for 2 years, and in all honesty, this is probably the most famous paranormal phenomena recorded on British soil. It's been made into films, TV shows, worldwide news have seen it, and it's all from a little council house in England. So
it definitely holds its name.
Yeah,
it definitely holds its name.
So from 1977 to 1979, two sisters, Margaret and Janet, were pretty much the main focal point for this paranormal activity, and it pretty much revolved around them, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and it was one in particular, wasn't it? Wasn't there one that really?
I think it was Margaret. Yeah. And I know that there was reports of like disembodied voices, loud noises. Toys were thrown, there was overturned furniture, and apparently the sisters were floating. So it is one that obviously it was 2 years this was covered for, obviously by Maurice Groves, probably one of the most famous paranormal investigators due to his name being tied with the Enfield Poltergeist. So I think it'd be quite good to discuss it this time instead of going off on one of our stories and discuss. But it's one of those ones where you just think, did things affect the research into it and the investigation?
I'd like to know if it was me looking into this case, so to speak. I'd love to know what it was built on, the foundations was built on, what it was previous to what the house was built. That would be my first sort of beeline into it, because we don't know what was, all these houses are built over time, and churchyards and churches were much bigger. I'm not saying it was a churchyard, that's not what, but you don't know what's necessarily underneath that property. You don't know what was hidden, if there was anything that was hidden. I know a lot of people back then, they like to do like the witches' bottles and place witches' bottles underneath their doorsteps and, build them into their house for good luck to keep witches away. Was that present somewhere in the house? It does take that. As you say, it is a very unique place because it's not something that, it's not a castle, it's not a fort, it's just a plain old council house. I suppose it's a little bit like the one up us, is it East in Pontefract, isn't it, a little bit?
Oh yeah. East Drive, I think it is.
That's it, East Drive, that's it. So it's a little bit like that, to be fair. You don't really know until you sort of probably... They're brave people, though, moving into it.
To stay there for 2 years as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to... I wonder, if you could question the people in there now. I suppose they know what they've moved into.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those ones where you think that, I suppose, though, that you can't visit it because obviously people live there, but why would you move into something that has got no paranormal history? That it has a worldwide media attention, so obviously you either don't believe in it at all and you just think it's a load of old crap, or you're interested in it and you want to find out more, and that it doesn't faze you if anything did happen there. But when obviously, as I said, the media coverage for this has been massive. I know that Hollywood have got involved. The Conjuring 2 was based on the Enfield Poltergeist, and I know that a few years ago Sky did a little drama about it. I think that had Timothy Spall in it, and that was quite a good coverage of that side of it.
Must admit, I agree with you there. Yeah, I do. I remember watching it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that you sort of frowned at, but it seemed to be quite a, it was as what I called it. It wasn't Hollywood style.
No. I think it was
Hollywood
done right.
Yes. Yeah. No, I totally agree there. Totally agree.
And I think with Timothy Spall, he played the role of Morris quite well. Morris Gross was obviously the lead investigator on this, but do you think, though, that with the media, do you think the media affected it?
Massively. Around that sort of time, this sort of paranormal thing was quite big.
Yeah.
Any little story, as we were sort of talking off air.
Yeah.
Look at today's newspaper compared to what it was back then.
Yeah.
This story probably would never have made the front of the Sun newspaper like it probably did back then. No. We're too busy in sort of what celebrities slept with whatever celebrity, or COVID-19 at the moment, and Brexit previous before that. It's very sort of high end what people want to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
But it would, how it was a front page headline back then, it'd probably get one little column somewhere.
Yeah.
In the back.
I think going back to our first podcast we did, which was my first ever podcast, and I appreciate you coming on for it. It was the you've only got to think, the Daily Mirror covered that 40 years prior to this, and that made, well, like you said, I think the Warrens came to that to Borley Rectory, and I think they also came to Enfield as well.
I do believe there is tangents that they did visit the place. I'm not sure
if it was as high profile as but I think.
Because that's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I find that quite interesting, to be fair, because the Warrens were quite big within the paranormal world. If they're, that a lot of people, it's Marmite with the Warrens. They either believe it or they don't.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much coverage via the Warrens.
No.
So does that give you an inkling that, all wasn't necessarily correct?
Yeah. Because obviously, if the Warrens did come over and this has been covered by the media for 2 years, they'd be going to the media themselves saying, "Oh, we've researched this place and it's absolutely, totally haunted, or there is paranormal activity." But maybe they didn't want to be tied to it because they might have felt a bit embarrassed by what was actually going off.
I totally agree with you there. I totally agree. That's where my question mark will sit with that whole situation.
Yeah. I think that's just the thing as well. Obviously, with this podcast itself and what I've stated before, like, we don't want to just sit on. I don't want to sit on the fence of yes or no, and I don't want to lean to one side. But I think this is a one where we can actually discuss it. Where there has it been a hoax? Is it the media swaying it, or is it the girls swaying it? But it is one where we could probably talk for hours on this. But I think where we'll go next with it is how do you think the girls themselves, Margaret and Janet, do you think they played on it?
Yes, I do, and I do believe in recent times that one of them has come out and said a lot of it was hoaxed or faked or whatever. And not to say it all was, because I don't necessarily. I do believe that there was a medium that actually went in there and transfigured or, used the demonic voice.
Yeah.
Now, for that to happen, she was either very well in on it.
Yeah.
But as far as I could read, that she sort of went and very quickly went and never said anything else
ever again. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I do believe that the girls were very much in it, and sort of just harping back to the paper side of it, I think the money was probably good back then.
Yeah, God, yeah.
So they were probably getting. I know Mum was there. Mum was getting paid for these stories, and then what we'll say, like child bribe, and you get a new dolly pram or a new teddy bear.
Yeah.
Back then that was quite big.
Yeah, God, yeah. I think obviously.
So I think they probably was, in my eyes. It was a little bit it was heavily sided with hoax.
Yeah.
But with something definitely there.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. Because you can't do an investigation for 2 years and then all of a sudden say it's fake. Because it all started, and I don't think I've mentioned it so far, is basically, I think what had happened was the mother of the two of the kids in general said that she saw furniture moving, so she rang the police. I don't know why she rang the police. I don't know what the police could have done with the floating furniture. But the policeman turned up and he saw it with his eyes as well. So this is that's where it's got the credibility, because it's got the law coming to someone's house and saying, "Yeah, I can see that," and then it was just a snowball that just rolled down this massive hill and got really out of control. And then I've said Hollywood movies, TV turned up, but I think. It's a hard one to nail down, and I personally, for me, I do think majority of it was attention seeking, like you said. But I think from there you have to then go, yeah, the girls probably did play on it a lot. The media didn't help, but I think from there, did Maurice Gross and Guy Leon Playfair, could have they done better on the research and the investigation, or do you think they handled it quite poorly?
Once again, I think it all goes back to what silver's been crossed in their palm.
Yeah.
If we look at we go back to that sort of Borley Rectory sort of case as well, and there was that, was there a bit of hoaxness going on there with oh God, I can't forget his name, Harry Price.
Yeah.
If you watch some of the programs about his investigations where he staged things, was it attention seeking back then? But it also, it made good media.
Yeah, definitely.
It made, around that sort of time, I suppose, telly wasn't that big, was it? And we've got a lot more to sort of pass the time away now than probably what they had back all them years ago. So if they're getting their money's worth, so to speak, they all could have been on it for all we know. We can sort of sit here and speculate, but the evidence to me heavily sides with sort of a bit of tomfoolery.
Yeah, definitely. I would go out on a limb and say that 70 to 80% of it, I'd say, was a hoax. Yeah. I do think, obviously, like we always say, there's got to be something. There's always fire that. Well, I can't even know the saying now. I'm that much of in a tangent of it. Basically, there's something that's lit this, and it's I agree. I should think she's just probably the mother or the daughters around. They all, young children. Minds are not necessarily. They're not been wiped yet. Yeah.
So if they're seeing something, like when I do my teachings and things like that, when you see the little girls and little boys and they go, I've got my imaginary friend. Yeah. Most of the time it is an actual spirit they're seeing.
Yeah.
It's because their minds have not been, the mum or dad will go, oh, don't be silly. You haven't seen anything like that.
So just going there. So you've actually spoken to kids though that have seen imaginary friends and obviously.
Yes, I've had a lot of my friends will ring me up and say, "Oh, so and me little girl's seen a little boy playing on the stairs."
Yeah.
And you sort of go, well, yeah, they will do because their mind is learning.
Yeah.
It hasn't been closed off by the negativity that we as humans, how many people would be frightened of that. So the little girl come down the stairs and said to mummy and daddy, oh, I've got a man in my room. Yeah. How many parents would be a little bit freaked out at that and go, oh, don't be stupid. There's no one in your room. So it's almost closing the mind down.
Yeah. I think as well, and I know you discussed it last time, especially like with the spirit guide. Do you think though, like if just for an example, if you went to obviously past the house itself, if what I'm trying to get is with the spirit guide itself, does it appear when it feels does it appear next to you when it feels something?
Yeah, if I was to stand outside that house, I'd get a sense of something, not if there was something right or wrong there.
Yeah.
I probably couldn't tell you exactly what it is till I got into sort of the aura of the house.
Yeah.
But I reckon I'd say 90% of my team would go there and they'd give you an answer. If they stood at the gate, looked at the house, they would give you an answer, yes or no.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I think that's the thing as well, is that with Guy, I don't think he was an actual investigator, if I remember rightly. I think he was more leaning on the journalist side of things, and he came to investigate with Morris, because obviously Morris was, to be fair, Morris was quite I'd say a lovable character as such, because like he seemed like the perfect investigator that got put into this madness of media. Well, as much of a hoax as we could probably say it is, and then obviously, I think for him it harmed his career a lot.
Yes, I would say so. Because I think I wouldn't like to say he sold out.
No,
because I don't want to take it that far.
No,
but once he got down that line, it's almost say I can't go back.
Yeah,
you get to a certain point, and he's gone. You know what? I have now got to carry through with this, no matter what happens, because if it comes out now, I faked it. I'm going to be, and you know, God rest his soul. That you know, it's only recently come out that it could have been hoaxed.
Yeah, which is sad. Obviously, I think I'll probably have to do some more research into it myself. But like Morris said, how would Morris have been roughly when he did this investigation? It had definitely been in the 50s, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think he was sort of we say we're only going by the portrayal of sort of what was online. So I'd say it was around that mid, early 50s, late 40s, maybe.
Yeah. So he built up a reputation for him to even go there.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've got it wrong, but did he go there at first as sort of like or was there something to do with a healthcare worker, or social service? Social services, what we would call social services.
I think you're right. I think obviously the mum herself was quite worried about the kids. She thought they were playing up, and they were. Well, I think the daughter was actually pretending she was in pain. I think I don't know if it was like say a healthcare worker or a social services worker, but like this phenomena where she was. This is the thing, because you would not hoax being in I don't know. This is the funny thing. Would you hoax being in absolute bitter agony at 11, 12 years old for attention for 2 years worth of media and coverage of your house on worldwide news, and then it just to go completely dead?
Yeah, I do see your point, and you can look at some of the photos online, can't you, to see like some of the contortionist positions. That the young girl got into. I don't know how easy back then it was to manipulate photos as it is as easy as today, but the photos that you see are quite spine chilling.
It is, because a kid of that age shouldn't be doing that.
No, and you sort of look at it again. You shouldn't be forcing your children to do it if there is something that the mother is involved with.
No.
If I just throw a curveball in there, now when you talk about we talk about sort of like these poltergeists and demonic possessions, a lot of it is sort of thrown. We're looking at it as maybe that the daughters were possessed.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. But if the mum is making the child do that, then there's nothing to say that the mum wasn't actually possessed and was forcing the children to do it.
Yeah, it was as much as media protection or as media how much public attention this case got. not many prying eyes were allowed in that house.
No.
Which is it's one of the best topics to discuss because of things like this, and I think
it's the thing that really gets me is if it was that haunted,
yeah,
it's still being lived in now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, if we look at, like, obviously you've got 30 East Drive.
Yeah.
No one's living in that.
No.
And I don't know if you've ever heard down in the Essex area that there's a place called The Cage in St. Joseph's.
Ah, yeah.
And it's a witches' prison.
Yeah.
Now, the lady has just sold that after, I'd say, about 5 years of trying to sell it.
Mm.
And, you know, it's taken a lot for it to be sold.
Yeah. Well,
and
I think another good case of that is, I know in Wales there's Tag, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is this massive castle as such. And it obviously was passed through the family. And then this woman bought it. I can't remember her name for the life of me. And she's not restored it or anything like that. And she's getting on a bit now. And I think a couple of years ago, it was up for sale at like $1 million. Obviously, it's a National Heritage Centre, but I think it's probably one of the most haunted places in Wales. No one wanted to buy it. No one at all.
That's, you know, and that's what I see. If the place was haunted, surely we would be getting, you know, little dribs and drabs of things that are happening within that house.
Mm.
Even now.
Yeah, definitely.
And
apparently as well.
Sorry, Ash. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think that the recorded spirit, and probably what you have seen as well on the TV programs and things like that, is that I think it was the male homeowner who previously lived there was the entity that stopped in the residence and was the ghost, and was the poltergeist who affected it. And I think that's the way. I think it was Sky that portrayed it, and it was a good way of doing it because it was more that it wasn't the Hollywood glitz and glam of jump scares or anything like that. It was just a bloke who died there with his wife. He died after his wife died. And that's where you start thinking, this is a man who's lost his wife, he's depressed, he's probably sad, he's lost everything in life. And his happiest memories are probably in that house, with his wife, with his family, and that's where his spirit probably is at rest. But it couldn't rest because the latter years of his life were quite depressing.
Yeah. But being a spiritual person, I actually find that I understand that he's depressed and I understand that he's sad and all that, but I don't know if he would take it to the extent of hurting children.
Mm.
And that's where I would think, you know, I know it's a podcast, but to the viewers that me and Ash are doing this by a video call. And if you look at my property that I'm sitting in, Ash, I moved here 4 years ago and the previous tenant died in here.
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems.
No.
I know she's about.
Yeah.
And I know she was unhappy.
Yeah.
Because as she was treated by the family.
Mm.
But she's never ever done anything to harm me.
No.
And I just think, you know, yes, there's going to be spirit out there that are really angry. I'm not saying that.
Mm.
But to harm children and place things, you know, the so-called chairs and the cupboards opening and everything. I don't know. I don't want to say yes or no to that one because that would be wrong of me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree, and I probably wouldn't do it myself. But it's more of the fact that, like, I think what it could have started out of as is like maybe the chair floated, or say that there were the knocks on the doors and there was knocking on the walls, and it was just like more of like a not like more teasing, and did the girls just like literally just go straight to that, play on it, and like I'll be honest with you, I think you're probably the best person to ask on that, but can you wind up a ghost that much that it just doesn't want to play ball for a start, and that can cause harm to you? And I know you've said to me previously that you've had stones and rocks thrown at you and things like that, but if you've got two teenage girls just teasing you, pretending that they're being possessed, and then it could switch between them just playing up and then it happening, or do they enjoy of they like the? It's such a hard thing because obviously the teenage girls that obviously either craved attention or just needed attention. I know that this is another thing that I'd like to bring up as well. It was just the mum as their parent that lived with them. They had no father figure, and this reported entity was a man. So did they see it as like play fighting, or did you see? It's one of them ones where it's quite a weird one to discuss that side of things, but it could just go down any route. And that's what I find fascinating about this.
Yes, I'll answer your first question. Yeah. Yes, you can wind spirit up. Do you wind them up to the point that they attack you? Possibly. Possibly. I've never wound a spirit up to the point that it's attacked me.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that can't happen.
Yeah, I would say that
can't happen.
Yeah, well, I would say this though: you're a trained and professional paranormal investigator. These are teenage girls. That's what I'd like just to throw in there.
Yeah, they could be. They could, could well be. Yeah, back then I thought rules were different. Then wasn't they? Children were supposed to be in their place, and the women, don't hold me to this, ladies listening, but women were supposed to cook their father the meal.
Yeah.
And it was very much the man was the breadwinner back in them days, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So if the girls were a little bit unruly, why can't, there's nothing to say that spirit would get angry that the mother is letting them run riot.
Yeah. I think this is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Would there be a point? The only thing that got me was the contortion positions.
Yeah.
That to me, if I was to see that now,
and
if I was working on a case and seeing that now, my mind would take me straight to the demonic.
Yeah.
Rather than a poltergeist or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's where I sit with it. I would see me. If I took that case on, and I'm going on the evidence that has been given to us, to me that would have been a demonic possession, and it would have been probably. I know it's very hard to do it nowadays, and especially in this country, is that if it was that bad, a priest would need to be.
I think a priest did go. I think that one or two.
I do remember a priest. I remember the priest in the episodes.
Yeah.
Was they there or wasn't they there? I don't know.
I think there was definitely an exorcism or two taking place there. But I'd like to ask you as well. I know it's not the nicest of questions, but have you ever come across something demonic or sort of seriously dark?
Yes. We, the demonic is with me. I'm very chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
So there's good and there's bad. And the bad side is a demonic presence. So that's a fallen angel that is trying to get to the earth plane.
Yeah.
And when I talk about a good spirit, I tarn everything with the same brush. Even though I say it's a good spirit, I'd put a murderer, a rapist, a normal person in that side because it's lived and walked the earth plane.
Yeah.
But a demonic hasn't walked the earth plane.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I see it.
Yeah.
That's not to say my word is gospel out there, guys. But the telltale signs, once again, is young children in spirit.
Yeah.
Demonic can twist a young child. They would use a young child over an adult.
Yeah.
Because if you're in an investigation or you're walking around doing a ghost hunt or whatever, and you see a little child sitting on the bench in spirit, everyone goes, "Oh, how nice is that?"
Yeah.
So it's manipulating. It can manipulate you at the lowest point. If you was to see a spirit sitting on that bench, you would talk to it very quickly.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get that same sort of sadness for it.
No.
That you would a child. And that's how the demonic work. They come in at very low entry and manipulated points.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm sort of drawn to maybe Morris. Was it Morris Green you said, wasn't it? His name wasn't Morris.
Morris Gross, yeah.
And I think he may have been manipulated by that.
Yeah.
He may have been, if he may have never worked with a demonic presence before.
No.
He could have been manipulated into, and once I said, going back to a previous comment, once you're down that line, you've gone past the halfway point. Yeah. It's not easy to turn back, and you have to go for it.
Yeah, definitely. It especially like I say with the demonic thing, you've got to be so careful as well, because it isn't nice to talk about, and like everything in this podcast me and you have said today, we're not trying to dig anyone out, we're not trying to do anything like that. We just want to discuss, because it's such a peculiar case. It's not like anything this well, I suppose you've obviously got other cases, but this was massive, and I think because the media grabbed it so early, they just ran with it, and I think it's quite a sad sight when you see people's careers tarnished from this, because Morris, by all accounts, was a fantastic investigator, and he was dragged into this because he was intrigued himself, but we do not know what went off behind those doors.
We do not know. And for all intents and purposes of it, she could the lady now, or the girl in the thing, has come out and said she's almost sort of taking the onus off of him.
Yeah. I think though, like you say, that I know Morris sadly passed away, but it's quite a sad thing to think that this is a person whose career in the paranormal field will always be remembered by that. It won't be remembered by the hundreds of investigations prior to that. It will end with him being in the investigator that did the Enfield haunting in the 70s.
But we can, let's put it that into a modern day.
Yeah.
Derek Acora.
Yeah, exactly.
I think when he first started, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
And that one little bit of, how would you put, did he do it on purpose? Didn't he do it on purpose? Yeah. Was it the media that was getting too much for him, that he had to do it? Yeah. And then, how he went from being there, coming down very quickly on that one thing. And it's like, this paranormal field can do that to you.
Yeah. I think as well, I've had Richard Felix on the podcast, and I did bring up to him about Derek. But I think with Derek, he had such a charisma about him. I know Morris was an investigator through and through, same as Derek. But with Derek, you hung on with every word he said. His mannerisms, his actions were fantastic, and he cared about what he did. He loved what he did.
Yes, I totally agree.
And let's be honest, there is stigma behind being a paranormal investigator, because obviously people think, it's loads of old crap and things like that. But he took pride in it. And I think the thing is, with the paranormal world and things like that, if you don't believe, you don't believe. But if you do, embrace it. Because ghosts have been going around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, in fact. Obviously, I spoke to Richard and said, like, the height of people's interest was, he said to me that Most Haunted back in the day was getting more views than The Simpsons. So you can't tell me that people don't care.
I don't care. I would argue with anyone to their blue in the tooth. To this comment, I'm going to say is Most Haunted is probably what every company and every paranormal investigator out there now has based their self on.
Yeah.
And they can say no, and they can say
it's not a bad thing, though. This is a thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's it's a little bit like that. Same with the Morris story. They've got so far down the line now, that they can't go back.
No.
And if they are faking things and doing things, it's because the expectance of the people watching the program need that.
And that's a good way to bring that up, because do you think that's what happened with the investigation? That it started off really high tempo with a lot of activity going off, and then it probably died off, and then the girls probably thought, you know what, we'll cook up some trouble and we'll make it happen again, and they carried it out for 2 years.
Yeah, and and plus the money side of things. I reckon the money back then was astronomical. Yeah. They if they lived in a council property, they could have had their house bought, or anything that would have kept them going for 2 years.
Yeah,
could have really helped, and that they've used it for their own gain.
Yeah, which to be honest, I think if anyone was in their situation, they'd have done the same. Yeah,
I think if I'd like to know what there was definitely money changed hands, even if the reports and the classified, if there was money that was changed hands by the media.
Yeah,
definitely. There has to be.
Yeah.
Now, what would that be in this day and age? If it was if we started, finding contortioned pictures like that.
Yeah.
Now, you'd have a lot of people saying it's fake, but you would have the occasional person that would take that up.
Yeah. And
the money that would be, you'd say the tabloids, like the Sun and the Mirror.
Yeah.
Would especially if it happened in that house again.
Yeah.
If it went back to that house and this started to happen again, I think you'd see a big case against it again.
Yeah.
I really do.
It would be interesting. And I think it is so hard. It's so hard to discuss. But I think the best way to end it, and I think the way we'll end it today, is that if you could have done anything differently with that investigation, how would have you done it personally?
Me?
Yeah.
It would have been media out of it.
Yeah.
And that would be my my sort of, if you want me to investigate it, there's no media until the end, until I've got all the facts, all the evidence.
Well, can I ask you a crafty question? What if I was a news reporter and I came up to you and said, right, if you let me in on it, I'll give you 50 grand.
At this present time, yes. But I would probably say, I'm quite a serious.
Yeah.
Yes, money talks. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if I don't want to sit here and say yes, I would take money, or no, I wouldn't take money, because
you don't know what circumstances.
That would be me lying, because money talks. You put a wad of cash in front of anyone's face, their heads will be turned.
Of course it would.
But what I would try and do is make sure that I've got a beginning, a middle, and an end before the media was involved.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't them following me an investigation. I just give them my notes. That's it.
Yeah, which I think,
if they wanted to, that's and that would also go with the family.
Yeah,
we do house investigations, and we have people email us and ring us up and say we think our properties, and that's down on the family. Do you know? It's
well, I think we'll end it there then. So sorry. Have you been to someone's house where they say they've experienced paranormal activity, and you've just been one-on-one with the family?
Yes.
Were you able to talk about it, or is it?
Well, I can mention a story, but just mention no names.
Yeah, no names. Yeah, I just would like to hear what actually.
We had an email come through of a gentleman.
Yeah.
He couldn't sleep. He couldn't. He was having strange things happen. Doors banging up the stairs and everything.
Yeah.
He contacted us. Yeah. He was in a real tizwas on the phone when I spoke to him.
Yeah.
You could hear him.
Yeah.
His grandson wouldn't go round to the property.
Yeah.
Because he was frightened. And he says, "What I want to do, sir, is I said, I can come to your property and I can investigate your property. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to make this decision on the phone call."
Yeah.
So I said, I will not answer the phone to you for the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
You've got to sit on this.
Yeah.
And then tell me what you want.
It's a very good mindset to have.
And that's how I did it. And then we went round there. And it was a little bit like the story of the Enfield house, you know, the Enfield hauntings. That is all it was there was a elderly couple that lived in the property.
Yeah.
And he died in the property, but his wife was taken away to die in a hospice.
Right. Okay.
And he couldn't find her.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, he was getting very
restless,
and he didn't harm anybody. Yeah. He just made himself known to little children that were frightened.
Yeah.
He never touched them. He never harmed them.
No.
Or anything like that. And even to the gentleman in question that was, you know, whose property it was now.
Yeah.
He said, I used to lay in bed and I could see the shadow walk across the door, and it was Pace.
Yeah.
And it was all just because he couldn't find his wife in spirit.
Yeah.
And all we did was just connected them both.
Yeah.
And to be fair, this was about a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a year ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And I had a really nice message from him about a month ago. And he said, thank you so much. I've had no more trouble since.
Fantastic.
And that, that's what, but he was worried that I was going to turn up in like the Ghostbusters car, I was going to have kit on our back and everything.
Yeah.
He said, how'd you turn up? I said, mate, I'm a normal person.
Yeah.
I just bring myself a notepad
and
a couple of gadgets, and I bring a couple members of my team.
Yeah.
And I always take a couple of members, and one of them, we're never all the same. We're never like, it's not male, 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 or female, female, female. It's either 2 male, 2 female.
Yeah.
It has to be, because within spirit, they like to talk. You might find a spirit that will only talk to a woman.
Yeah.
And that would be very hard for me to sit there and say, well, I can't talk to him because he's not wanting to talk to me, and I've got no female presence there.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thanks. It's always a pleasure, Russ, to have you on.
No problem.
Russ did the first podcast with me, and to be honest, when I had Russ on, honestly, I couldn't have had anyone better on with me. He calmed me down. He's very good storyteller. And if anyone's listening to this in the Essex area, in the London area, I know, do you want to plug any ghost hunts in the near future?
We've just gone to the website, guys, www.essexghosthunters.co.uk, and everything on there, and obviously our Facebook, social media and all that. You can follow us on there, guys. So
fantastic.
We're just a little old team from Essex. That's all we are.
Brilliant. Right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Take care.